Hey darlings. Ines had already drunk the third cup of coffee and was terribly angry. Even her favorite drink, together with a small chocolate bar, did not help her to regain balance in her soul. The reason for this stress was the unexpected decision of her son Ranka to marry. And no matter what, it's a matter of life. But his choice made the woman out of herself. Probably even more empty than a red rag would be somewhere in Caribe, Spain. She was in madness. Oh my God, where did he just dig up this homeless creature? Thought Inessa. Also, some name, old-fashioned for future daughter-in-law. Liza Lazanka. What kind of misfortune is this? The secretary looked into the office and was interested in the service. Inessa Vladimirovna, you have a visit to a new marriage store. Have your plans changed? Their director calls, wants to meet such an important client as you. Inessa was surprised. She was called a sad woman, so she had to climb into the trap. Sometimes it's hard to be successful and also a media personality. It was not enough for the media to smell why she was going to the best salon in the city for a bridegroom. Until official news about her son's wedding was not on the press and TV, but it's just a matter of time. Soon, such a curious mess will begin around their family. The novel and Lisa didn't notice anyone around. They dissolved into each other in their love. They decided to get married not because they were expecting a child, as it often happens with other couples. They could even live without each other, being together for several hours, days, weeks, and weeks. But they didn't want to. It became difficult for them to breathe. The colors around them faded, the sun didn't warm up, and the frost in winter seemed to be boundless and icy. Orman argued to his mother his wish to marry at the age of, and he tried to understand it, but nothing worked. In his head, the pictures of his youth were floating up, the happy family life that was. Inessa's parents were of average quality. Her father was an engineer, her mother was an accountant. Both worked at a large machine-building plant, a stable and well-developed enterprise. The advance and receipt were given to the workers strictly by schedule. For the hard work, there were commendable records in the labor book, honorary certificates, and even regular awards. As Inessa's mother used to say, "We went to the sea every year for vacation. We were lucky enough to get a job, no worse than other people." In the so-called late 90s, the family went on a boat of prosperity. And then, all of a sudden, everything in front of us broke down. The plant got up on the go like a dugout. They began to take out everything that was badly lying, from fans and ball handles in the cabinets to parts of the conveyor parts. All this was sold on the natural markets or carried home for economic needs. Inessa's parents lost their jobs in one part, and they didn't know what to do with it. They were interrupted by crops with a fertile dacha, where potatoes were born large and tasty, and the fruit trees did not offend apples, plums, pears. Mother went to the Lombard, where some of her golden decorations were lost, and then a teaspoon of silver spoon with stones, which was considered a family treasure. The senior in the class, Inessa, didn't even understand that it was a complete waste of time. She would come from school, rush to the cinema or disco with her friends, and it was easy to study, to make the lessons, which were scheduled for the next day. Usually she didn't leave for more than 2 hours. A piece of pie with apple jam was taken from the table. He'll drink from a liter can and go outside. How much does it take for happiness to be years old? The Nishaka and Navalka were somehow lasting for a year. The father of the guard was setting up the construction site. He was slowly carrying bricks, cement, and a can of paint. Waste. It will either boil the construction site, or it will die again on the spot with another one. The management is constantly changing. Who will count the good for good? She found some fake workbooks and a girl's mother. She was taking some accounting papers for the newly opened private enterprises, but she couldn't stay long anywhere. She came to the sacred horror of all kinds of fake wires, was afraid to go to jail for fraud, and the fees were in envelopes. Before the graduation night at school, It turned out that a new outfit. And then her mother went to visit the Lugia's shop. She also lived on their site. The doors of 4 two-room apartments, which looked like each other, were coming out. Ludmilla was a famous person in the house. She had a tent near the bus stop where she could buy any foreign stuff. She didn't speak a word about the things that belonged to the wardrobe, just a little bit of nonsense. A pile of men's underwear and socks, women's underwear, chubby one-time treasures. The trade was going well. The goods were cheap, but they could be helped out for a while. And there it would be a pity to throw out if it was bought for free. Lucia took customers not in quantity, but in quantity. To the general amazement, this scheme, in the time of the common moneyless, worked well. In the corner of the Soulful Illusion, there was a nice dress for Inessa. But the trouble was that it turned out to be not in the pocket of the girl's parents. The graduate school was again in a state of grief. The situation of Luda's offer saved her. A couple of weeks to bargain in a tent instead of her. The owners of the night business just had to get together with another batch of goods in the Middle East. She traveled to the Middle East. Priority to Poland. If the friendly tourist agency helped, it could have taken over Romania and Hungary. When it was necessary to bring something more decent, it captured Yugoslavia. But this was already considered the highest pilotage. Such routes were not accessible to all, only to the selected, devious representatives of the gray trade with great experience. Inessa was well prepared for the graduate exams. She left the office unexpectedly only for a consultation, until she passed another test to pass the exams. Tickets were like nuts, and she hurried to her post, where something unexpected happened. Everything left to her from the shelves flew away like hot cakes. This effect was not expected by the Ines herself, not surprised by Ludmilla. She was laughing. Well, you're a friend. Your hand is light. Even I have not managed to sell the things I brought so quickly. You are a born-to-be trade fighter. You managed to persuade even the most doubtful comrades to buy. If you do not find yourself after school of application, I will gladly take you as a director. On the graduation night, Inessa was the queen of ball. The chosen dress was rejected. Lugia brought a real cocktail miracle to her assistant. Dark blue perfection under the light of her eyes. With boars and large white peas, with coquette bows, with sequins. They added a row of Yugoslav bassinets on a high cablock. The whole school in the acting hall froze with delight when Inessa entered the room after the solemn meeting on which everyone was already awarded the attestation. The director of the school allowed himself unheard luxury. In addition to tables with a shortage of smoked cheese and sausage, imported hard, Inessa was invited to the party not only by her classmates, but also by all the other boys from her school. Everyone wanted to hug such an amazing princess, but she was taken away by a soloist of a music band. Boris was enchanted by the young girl, not for a joke. At the age of, he did not remember that he had fallen for someone so much. He thought about himself. This is not a girl. This is a gentle blue primule, as divine and strange as those flowers that my mother grows in the garden. It's even scary to touch them. They're so fragile. Boris didn't say his thoughts, who liked the young girl at the stairs, out loud. He politely invited us to have a snack in the buffet while the musicians took a time out for a rest. The girl was plump. She was tall, long-haired, and handsome, and he pointed her out of the crowd of other graduates. She was lured by the attention of such an adult young man. He was so wonderfully looking after her that evening, so faithfully looking into her shining blue eyes. Any girl would melt in 2 counts. Inessa was no exception. Drank champagne, popular songs and tracks about love raged in the imagination. Enchanted glances of the Pleiades of the cavalry raised self-esteem. After the graduation, Inessa allowed Boris to go home and even kiss. He arranged a date for her the evening of the next day. The family council on the future graduate was held in the morning after the festive evening. The girl's parents really wanted to see her daughter as a student in one of the city universities, but her choice was different. Inessa firmly told her parents that she would be entering the trade industry. The training form in this institution is only I2I, and 3 years and 10 months is not such a small term. It's okay. She has enough patience. Inessa will wait for this time to become a smart salesman, an expert. She was supposed to make the consumer market a niche of interests. She had to become a qualified specialist to feel like a fish in the water. She didn't want to listen to any arguments of her parents in favor of choosing higher education. The older generation was forced to step back from such iron determination. Inessa's plans for the future were somewhat upsetting to her neighbor Lucia. The first step towards reconciliation was the promise of the girl not to leave after the entrance exams and to work in Lazina's farm again. Ludmila promised Inessa 8% daily income and a joint trip to Poland for goods. This is how Inessa Vladimirovna's future career began. A very famous person in the regional city. The owners of the supermarkets network are all for the house and family. In their territory, it was possible to replenish not only food supplies, but also to dress, buy cosmetics, and household accessories for the repair and cleaning of the house. And she also handed over the area around the perimeter of her unobstructed territories, on well-organized sites, from hairdressers to chemists and sewing clothes. For complete harmony, Inessa graduated from the Faculty of Economics at her home university. She thought about going to law school, but then realized that she didn't want to become a student or even a graduate student. Business was taking all her time. She was one of those entrepreneurs who could not only stay in one of her numerous. She could live in them for a week and not even notice that her son was starting to forget how his mother looked. The nannies did not save him. He was insanely bored. In such moments, she was in a hurry. Romana almost grabbed a bite and went with him somewhere to the warm sea, where she dedicated herself to the only son, whom she loved without memory. She loved his smell when she was stuffed into the thick crown of Russian hair. I loved his voice when he lay down in the evening and demanded, "Mom, I don't want the fairy tale. I'm already old." Read me again Alexander Belayev, about the man amphibious and the head of Professor Dov. Ramka in childhood and youth terribly loved something so fantastic, and then suddenly got into mystical stories about the Obratnaya, Altai, Bigfoot and mermaid, witches, and the mischief of black cats and crows. During the reading, the boy's big, gray eyes became like a saucer. But it was not fear. They were delighted with the desire to possess some magical, perhaps extrasensory abilities. But no mystical creature grew out of it. It turned out to be a tall, very handsome guy who believed that and on Easter Island, all statues are installed by representatives of the alien civilizations. Her boy was not at all abnormal. He mastered all school subjects, but was attracted to literature and history. The choice of a future profession did not make him wait. He easily entered the Faculty of Journalism, gaining quite high points at the EG, without exception for all the necessary specialties. Inessa didn't even have to connect heavy artillery in the form of communications in university circles. Roman got into the budget without a bitch and a bitch. Without help, whoever it was, with a hairy hand, as it is sometimes called. Inessa refused to help her driver. She decided to go to the salon for the newlyweds herself. She loved to drive a car, but this eternal position made her keep the brand and the whole staff of the house. Although all these references to the so-called elite society of snobbers were not at all her liking. If she could, she would drive from their country house to the city and back on his old motorcycle. Her father, Roman, was also a great friend of hers. The same musician from the ensemble that entertained the youth and parents on the graduation night. Then, on their first date, he came running to her on a brand new Ducati, which shone bright with bright colors in the sun. Inessa was waiting for the moment of their meeting with the heart's calm, and then the guy found another such a cool toy on the wheels. Their romance was twisted and developed rapidly. Only then, A bright comet flew over her skyline and disappeared somewhere behind the new love horizons of Boris extremely quickly. The young man was constantly searching for young, inexperienced hearts. And he was a nasty guy. He liked to be with innocent people first. He played with another pretty doll and a baby bunny, as he liked to call his fans, and swam in the air, leaving no traces. He was beautiful. No one could resist his charm and charisma. Although in the times of youth, the word charismatic man was not even in the news. He did not force anyone. He didn't spare any money for nice presents. He was having fun, giving compliments, waiting for the girl to see it for herself, to thank her boyfriend for it. Inessa, a week after their first date, was wearing small golden earrings with fianites. She was wearing a jeans suit, a black paper t-shirt almost all the way to the white circles. Her friends went crazy with envy. And the one who knew about Lucia's clothes immediately took out her resume. These shirts are made by the shopkeepers here, but the fashionable suit is obviously brought from somewhere in the Baltics. They are brought there by Scandinavians in exchange for Baltic dairy products. Your watchman didn't spare money for such beauty. The parents didn't interfere in the love affairs of the Ines. They saw that their daughter's eyes were burning with happiness, but they didn't worry. Boris was understandable. His passion was not to stay overnight at his place. He returned home not too late. The girl, who had lost her temper after the hot hugs of the young man, flew home every time on her wings and then, for another half a night, could not sleep, remembering how tender her friend was. The ending of their novel reminded her of the to appear less often, and Nessie had to sit with her conspects at least sometimes in the evenings and not go on dates. In the technical department, she passed all the tests and control work successfully and on time, but prepared for them at the expense of sleep. She was getting more and more tired, lost her appetite, and was constantly nauseous in the morning. She had been pregnant for the second month. Years in such cases is rare for those who have serious experience. The first and unpleasant feeling was the mother of Inessa. The constant trips of the daughter to the toilet immediately hinted at what could be the reason for such a lack of discipline. The daughter asked directly, "Inessa, did something happen between you and Boris? Look me in the eye." The girl did not give up. She always had enough strength and character. "We love each other from the beginning, and I am already an adult. A week has passed like years have passed. So if your suspicions are under your mother's control, we will somehow get married under the circumstances. I will have a child, and we will have a real family." Inessa, neither in her sleep nor in her spirit, did not know at that moment that Boris was already cutting the circles near the new housekeeper. Even in that moment, he was leading another naive lady to an ice cream cafe. The girl turned out to be still slender, and he wanted to quickly twist her and drag her away. In his dreams, he had already drawn such pictures of how this joyful event would look like for him, which he did not even remember about Inessa. She was a stage in his career of the local casino. She was very famous, of course, but she always had to study, work at the neighbor's market, and a new passion, such a bunny. The conversation between Inessa and Boris took place in a couple of days. He calmly accepted her pregnancy notice. His not-so-fatherly feelings, not even a little bit of responsibility, did not torment him. "Baby, you're not a little child. You should have taken care of the fact that you were supposed to be taken care of. I have no father. You know, my whole apartment is made of musical equipment. We're rehearsing with the guys in my studio, and we're always making sure that baby is not uncomfortable there. To be honest, I wanted to tell you that our love has come to an end. From my side, it was just an attraction, so goodbye and don't hold back." Boria was listening to the echoing grimoire and sang the words from the famous song. "People meet, people fall in love, get married. I'm not lucky in this, it's just a disaster." Then I turned around and walked through the lips. "I'm not a monster. I'll give you plenty of money for the break. When you're done with this, find me. I'll return the amount you spent." Inessa loved Boris very much. She lived and breathed by him alone. And now, after his words, her soul died. She was covered with an icy crust of heart. She had another quality and character. It's hard to say if she was bad or good. She was proud. She knew how to gather and hold her face. She knew how to pinch her teeth and keep silent. She knew how to make fateful decisions. Therefore, at home, she gathered the parents in a small kitchen and said, "There will be no wedding. Moreover, there will be no wedding in my life at all. Never. But I will leave the child. My future baby is not to blame that he got a scoundrel father. I will compensate him for everything he does not see and does not receive from such a dad." The fashion shop was located on the other side of the city, in one of the new buildings. On the way, Inessa will try to drive away all these memories, take herself in the hands, and not give the appearance of Liza and the staff of the store in what she is depressed mood. In the salon, Inessa and Vladimir were met as some kind of queen, almost under the white handle, led to the rows of luxurious dresses. The director was laughing and laughing at the fact that Inessa's girlfriend already had a very mature son, and he thought that she was no more than years old. The woman was thinking. She could not love secular ceremonies with some rules of forced etiquette. I hope that the news about my only son's wedding will not spread all over the city, like a bird flying out of the door of your store. What? You are so kind. You are ours. The voice of the owner of the salon began to resemble a sweet pat. My girls will keep their mouths shut. We understand the privacy of this information. Liza Lazenko was already sitting in a huge viewing room with many wardrobes. She was trying to squeeze into a graceful couch so that less attention was paid to her. And again, for a moment, memories poured over Inessa with a wave. She was trading with a huge belly in Lucy's tent. The baby will have to buy a lot of things after his birth. The parents have not yet found a job for themselves. In the distance, suddenly, Boris sees another young friend, gently hugging her shoulders. The smart girl is capriciously blowing her lips, showing her fingers at Ludmila's house, where the bright swimwear are hung today. Boris is not embarrassed at all. He is sure that Inessa will not talk about what the child carries in her heart. He greets her as usual, nothing important for him to his old friend. The couple leaves after buying the swimwear. Inessa doesn't want to touch the money that her former love has unbridled from her jeans pocket. They seem dirty to her. These 5 minutes became the starting point when she clearly understood that there would be no return to the love and care between her and Boris. Therefore, that day she remembered for the rest of her life. The flame of hope that was barely burning in her soul lit up for a second and died forever. Inessa, as always, did not even burst into tears. Her eyes remained dry. Only she felt sorry for that fool who left the Lucia tent with the swimmer in her hands. In the testimony of Roman's birth, the father's handwriting was in the count. They had the same fatherhood as their son. The boy was born and lived for 20 years like his mother's property. Blood is from blood, flesh is from flesh, and they don't need anyone else. The director of the salon, for the young wives, was in a hurry to plant seeds ahead of the nobility and was cleaning with exclamations. Dear you, for you and your future bride, everything is only the best. Choose, measure, select the accessories. Marriage is such an exciting day for a girl. If he is lucky with a fiancé, he becomes the only and unique memory of the wonderful wedding day. And in your case, I'm sure that's exactly how it will be. Inessa looked at the future bride trying to disguise herself under the part of the interior in which she once sighed. But what a murmur and rustle. Another would already spin near the brackets with dresses, would twirl the head of the shop assistant, and all the dresses are nothing. As if someone else is getting married, not her. Having gathered the will and emotions in her fist, Inessa Vladimirovna ordered, "We will only look at the last 2 collections. No old-fashioned assortment. The shades of white can be different, But keep in mind that the bride has a brown eye and light hair. You all understand. The saleswomen ran, got busy, brought ravens of wedding dresses of different styles, gentle colors. Lisa, with a martyrdom expression on her face, went to the fitting room. A couple of minutes later, the director of the salon with the nose was being motorized. He was wearing glasses with smoking coffee, steaming bottles with mineral water, a couple of glasses with orange fresh, and Nessa immediately thought, how strange, a man with loose hair. He has a team that has no one to offer coffee to. Or have I already become such a VIP persona that he decided to serve me personally? Grow in their own eyes. Today, she was always visited by memories, visited by whole fragments of her ambiguous destiny. Now she suddenly thought about men. She had many of them, mostly young lovers, 10 years younger than her. This boy was lured by the goodwill of a beautiful, successful, rich, and not old woman at all. She was talking to them purely for health. She went to the resort with her only son. She was not a good girl. She liked to have a good time with the gentleman. Even on the day's schedule, she would have a date like this, a meeting at a place like this, a visit to the city administration, 2 hours for a man and a woman. She thought that this would allow her to stay in good female form for a long time. Moreover, Inessa's heart was not stone-hearted. For 20 years, since the moment of the novel's appearance, she fell in love twice. The first was the cute Artem. He was the so-called assistant in the team of the Lucia traders. He carried the bags, disassembled them in the morning, and collected the tints in the evening. Inessa only finished her technical studies, gave her son to a kindergarten. Fortunately, almost since his birth, her mother was constantly at the top of her education. Her grandson was constantly at the top. Or rather, what's the big deal? Until the first kindergarten in the life of Ramka, her mother spent days and nights with him, so that Inessa could get a diploma. At first, they were just friends with Artem. They helped each other in everything at work, especially when Lucia was leaving for another trade voyage. Her trade interests shifted from Europe to Turkey. She flew away 2 times a month for 2 or 3 days. When she returned, everyone had enough tasks, especially the SNS, and they now worked at a new contractual level. One of their tints, Ludmilla, was completely transferred to her rent. The incomes of the newly informed business lady grew. She was now fully supported by her parents and son. The boy was 2 years younger than Inessa, but he looked older. His family lived a hard life. He was also the only one in the family who fed them. That's why all his colleagues were close and understanding. Having set up all 3 tints in the morning, checking if everything was going well with the other 2 women, Artyom hurried to Inessa. They even had mutual and friendly duties. The young woman brought hot sweet tea from the house of the big thermos every day. The helper ran to the tray for delicious fried pies with potatoes or liver. So they didn't sell it everywhere, Boyko, until the time came in the evening to pack unsold goods and cover the tints. Artem helped Ines very much in his time. She didn't stop at the first tint then. She rented, and then bought out a few more trading points. And he was always close. Their relationship could not be called fire-loving. Rather, it was a very strong friendship, with warmth and mutual help. At the beginning of her first independent steps, Artyom was in the right place at the right time. They remained friends until now, although they had lived in different cities for a long time. After 7 years of relationship, the man was tired of her refusal to join his proposal, to marry or at least live together. He left her and Lucy, not making a loud noise at the door. Soon he married successfully, has long been raising 2 children. Both women and the now successful Inessa Vladimirovna and already aged Lucy remembered him with gratitude. After Artyom, there was also Ruslan, caring, attentive, affectionate, eloquent poet of toasts and compliments, like all Caucasian men. Inessa met him on the ground of construction projects when she was working on a building for her first supermarket. She bribed him for not trying to embezzle it, for lying about the money, The quality of the used construction materials, the deadlines, all three massive platforms for trade, in which all her dreams and wishes were respected, he helped her to make them come true in the last 10 years. She gave him care not at once, although he was beautiful and stately, like some Caucasian prince. Inessa was embarrassed that he had been married for a long time, as she expressed. She did not understand such high relationships with her husband. When a man has been living and working abroad for many years, and his devoted Penelope gives birth to children after his visits, and then she brings them up. Ruslan whispered to her during the hot dates, "My sweet, just say the word. I will divorce. I live with you alone. I love you so much. I will move to Russia forever. I will build a house for us with you." Inessa was in love, attached to her knight, but it was not her rule to destroy someone else's family. Ruslana had already grown 5 children, and she knew too well what it was like to raise a child in an incomplete family. Well, let the best of Ruslana's offspring be at least a nominal father, appearing in the house a couple of times a year with a mountain of gifts, then there will be none at all. In the promises of the lover, one of the words, the house, caught on. She clearly understood that she wanted to have her own home, a nest, a secluded place from the curious eyes. After she was deported to the exploitation of the Third Trade Orphanage, she became so famous in the city that without curious looks, she could not appear in any public place. Ruslan ruined her house as a farewell gift to his departure to his homeland. He was older than her by years, worked off his. He was far away before retirement, but never stifled. He gave his soul and heart to the project. So he was overpowering and began to get sick. He complained about the heart that was full of excitement while he was creating stone constructions and loving his Inessa. A worthy man, worthy of memories. A woman never regretted her long romance with him. And then the turn of boys and bunnies came, as she ironically called them. Now she chose comfortable objects only for the body. The soul was silent. Inessa woke up from the rumbling and barking of the consultants' sellers around Lisa. Her future bride appeared with a fitting in another dress, which turned her unpretentious appearance of the mouse on the handkerchief unrecognizable. "And this is what you need," thought the business lady, a real and smart expert. What can human fate and actions be like when they put people in different circles? Or maybe I'm just an owner. I don't want to give my son to the daughter-in-law of my rival for any money. The chosen dress, all intact and approved by Inessa Vladimirovna, was put into the paint box. During the ceremony of fitting, discussing the merits, Lisa didn't miss a sound. As if it wasn't for her, an outfit was created, in which she would walk with Roma into a new life. Inessa was nervous. "Lisa, do you like what the stylists of the salon have chosen for you?" The girl was. "Let it lie at our house before the wedding. Don't worry. I will not show your fiancé, remembering the established beliefs and features. And now I'm in a hurry. Should I throw you to the center, or you will get there yourself?" The shop manager immediately intervened in the conversation. "You are such a busy man, dear Inessa Vladimirovna. We will send the girl by taxi. Everything will be in order." In a minute, the stay of Inessa in the salon was just like the strong scent of expensive perfume. One of the saleswomen grabbed Liza by the hand and took her to the rest room for the staff. "I'm not jealous of the one who will become the bride of this cruel and not criminal woman. She is not a human, a beautiful robot, without a soul and a heart. However, I'm sorry that I'm talking too much. Let's have some coffee while we drink. The car will pick you up in minutes." Liza finally exhaled. In fact, she was not as stubborn as her future mother-in-law thought. She endured all the ups and downs in her address only because she madly loved her Romka. And he was wonderful, not like her stubborn mother at all. The girl with gratitude took a cup of coffee from the saleswoman. She smiled at her, and she immediately thought, "And this girl is not as simple as it seems at first glance. Adding a little bright colors to her appearance will become a real beauty, the owner of the same beauty that is not visible at first, but falling into the soul is never forgotten. At this moment, Lisa thought about her mother, who raised her alone. Without the help of her husband, grandparents, some in their family could not be determined. Her mother was an orphan since childhood. She didn't know who her parents were, if she had a relative. She refused to have a child. Her mother, who was not a good mother, had already been in the maternity home. There was no one to give the child a daughter, and then there was no one to raise her in the maternity home. Everyone was confused by the lack of any data about her origin. There are still vague memories of the maternity home in the specialized hospital. She was lucky that in that period of her life with her, there were no sharp incidents related to the inadequacy of the. In those years, I didn't even have to dream. And paper books in a huge number became a reality. What she wrote in a sluggish manner, school works and notes in the wall newspaper, was noticed by a teacher of Russian language and literature. On a white sheet, the letters on Lisa's mother's book turned into a built-in elegant phrase. You read and you want to read. She was so good at teaching small events in school that it turned into a star-like hour of victory, triumph, delight. The reason why she later became a student of the Faculty of Journalism was the story of the mayor's election. As it should be, the future city manager, though the contenders for the key position were not called that from birth, was the man who was inspecting the hospital of the orphanages. The God-given case was useful for the PR. It was necessary to show how the trepidantly high-profile post relates to the future generation and the suffering of patients. After the visit of the official, Lisa's mother was entrusted to write an article about him in a school newspaper. The result of her work was admired not only by the children's institution, but also by the team of the future mayor. The note was published in a local printed newspaper, discussed in the People, served as a huge bonus in the whole pre-election campaign. Everything looked like a fairy tale from the outside. The mayor was chosen to be the mayor, certainly not because of the efforts of a lonely orphan with literary talent, but her participation added to the choice of a touching detail of the soul. The owner of the prestigious position did not forget the girl who wrote about him so heartily and sincerely. He took an active part in the structure of her life after school. He made sure she didn't get a scholarship when she entered university. A real shark fist of the regional scale came out of Lisa's mother. Her articles were read with pleasure and interviewed famous people in the city. One thing turned out tragically. The woman passed on her daughter the fate of the orphanage, as if created for copy, to look like her. She left life early, didn't pay attention to the fact that the angina was somehow too tight, doesn't let out from her clenched legs. The swelling of the throat didn't arise at the place of the undone infected cell. It developed rapidly. While Lisa and her mother were getting to the house by snow-covered snowcaps, the woman got suffocated. Now Lisa has already filled the rows of orphanages. She enjoyed this bitter pebble of discovery. The mother passed on to her daughter, through some unknown genetic channel, bright creative abilities. In the PR campaigns, Lisa did not participate. She was increasingly interested in criminal chronicles and extraordinary phenomena. Then she went out of town to see what kind of nylons would hang over one of the villages. Or what mysterious body did the kids in the forest find? Most often shocking news was the duck, which was not checked with a whip. But in one of these trips, Lisa met Roma. They returned home together, and since then they have almost never parted, like a little girl with a little boy. Inessa Vladimirovna, always busy from morning till evening with her business, missed the fact by the ears. She was far from the student life of a day off, and all that she usually had. She only knew that he would leave sometimes for a couple of days for new sensations, wanted to be the eyewitness of some ambiguous events, but did not ask in detail, trusted his reason and independence. She assumed that her son had a girlfriend. He wasn't a monk, but she tried not to ask personal questions. She wanted to share it with him. After the trip to the wedding hall, Nessa, surprised by herself, didn't go to work. She wouldn't manage without her. It's not a kindergarten, but a well-fitting trading mechanism. She wanted to come home, change into suitable clothes, get rid of stress by riding a motorcycle. The steel horse, as she thought, even politely smiled at her. What? The owner? Is she bad in the soul? Let's go to drive away the longing. Only her son knew about the passion of the Ines to motorcycles. She, from the first minute she sat on the seat of a powerful toy, felt like she was one with the whole. How many times could she change the old Urals into something stylish, fashionable, more modern? No, she was a fan of the Iron Comrade, bought many years ago. She took him to technical service and made him cry like a child. A fine figure of a woman gently wrapped around the motorcycle. The hair is a little bit out of the helmet. The eyes with protective glasses shone with pleasure. It seems she has come up with a way to upset her son's wedding. We need to include a funny scenario for the holiday. For bravery, she drank a glass of wine, then another, took out of the closet a manicure set. She had very sharp scissors in it. The miniature holes in the dress were similar to the whole embroidery of Richelieu. The selected lace underwear for the dress will be visible great. Let Lisa risk being seen as such a useless person. In this night, Inessa was sleeping like a baby. She was growing strong in her confidence that she would now be able to fight off the son of a helpless girl. On the same evening, when Inessa Vladimirovna was preparing her cover surprise for her future daughter-in-law, Lisa and Roman were sitting in a confectionery cafe. Both of them were desperate sweet eaters. As everything went well, the groom asked, smiling, "Mom didn't crush you with her authority. What is it, Ramesh?" She was the one who was kind. And how the director of the salon and his subordinates looked after her. You would have seen this picture at the morgue. After all, you have an amazing woman. She has achieved everything in life. You grew up in a way that made me and myself happy. I hope that we will find common language with her and even become friends. Young people finished discussing their preparations for the wedding, muttered rumors about witches living in one of the remote villages. They joked that they would go to the mysterious old woman together, and then everyone would write about her their own material. They loved each other very much, really. Without calculations, underwater stones and lies, they looked at the world with the same eyes. The case when a man found his half, assigned to him by the heavens themselves. In 2 days before the wedding, Inessa couldn't take it. She decided to take Liza's dress to leave her a chance to fix the situation. What if this is not so simple and awkward? She will be able to marry the novel without any moral losses. Inessa was sure that the girl wouldn't get away with it. She wouldn't sew up numerous holes or close them with some ridiculous application. She couldn't afford to buy a new dress. The situation was, in Inessa's opinion, unreliable. Lisa took a box with a shell from the hands of her future in-laws with words of gratitude. She offered to invite guests to drink tea, but she was busy, so she hurried to leave. The girl was surprised by the behavior of the woman, some kind of trick, and she was not mistaken. When she turned the dress, she quietly sighed. All over the front of the luxurious dress, tiny holes were shining, turning the dress into a rishido made of expensive fabric. Lisa sobbed silently. She had neither strength nor desire to call and complain to her beloved. She will not let him down. Now she will turn over her whole wardrobe, but find a dress in which she will appear in front of the guests the day after tomorrow. 2 hours after the hard search, the girl realized that she was in a hurry with her hopes for stockings. The only decent dress was sewn in the orphanage for the graduation party. The sponsors then were generous with the rolls of beautiful fabric. The only problem was that the girls were offered only 3 options of material for the selection. Later, she laughed that at the holiday disco all the ladies were like twin sisters. The same hairstyles made by hairdressers and volunteers, the same pink, turquoise, or emerald green dresses. The Portniches and their rich fantasy institutions were no different, but Liza's dress still brought her into a new life. Then there was the constant renovation of her room in the family dormitory. The state could not provide her with another home. She barely had enough money for the most necessary things. Where could she think about the wardrobe? She remembered her mother saying, "I don't have enough fat to be alive." For her student life, she wore more comfortable jeans, summer trousers, t-shirts, sweaters, especially considering that Lisa was constantly looking for unusual topics for her articles in the newspaper in the surrounding towns and villages, where she worked as an out-of-state correspondent from the first year. She had enough money to buy the end of the end, but she couldn't afford to buy the end of the end with the money she earned. She was very lucky that Roman took her as she was. I would never have thought that her future in-laws would want to do this to her. It was a pity to tears, but Inessa Vladimirovna went down to such a pettiness. Now she was holding the old broken mom's box, but the ballerina, in the background of the mirror, as in her childhood, did not want to move. She refused to sound in music. The girl with an upset threw away the old rarity, in which, once wondering why her mother. A small notebook fell out of one of her parts. Lisa picked up the find, opened the first page, and recognized her mother's handwriting. She began to eagerly read what was written. It was a copy of a small diary. She hurried, skipping the dates, remembering only names and events. Her head went round. Her mother confessed in her notes there were doubts in the epicenter, painfully made fateful decisions. Liza first found an answer to the question who her father was. The news was shocking. It was the famous artist of the local dramatic theater, Menshikov Kirill Valentinovich, the one whose face constantly decorated with many posters, glued around the city. Don Juan, Grigory Melikov from the poem Dawn, Chad from the comedy The Sorrow from the Mind, Richard Wiley from the P.S. Lux. Lisa didn't understand anything. What could have been connected with her mother in this? Kirill was soon surrounded by new fans in the choir. Lisa's mother managed to get pregnant after just a few dates. He was not told about the end of the meeting in the actor's little apartment. The man was so involved in the bohemian life that a careful father would hardly succeed. It is not a very honest approach to such an important event as the birth of a child to make a decision for two. But, oddly enough, women do this in a strange way. Lisa's mother was no exception. She didn't find Kirill. She didn't talk to him seriously. She preferred to keep everything in secret, to blame her daughter for not having her father. God is her judge. Lisa thought she was not entitled to assess her mother's actions. She had not been alive for so many years, but she thought, how would our fate with my mother be if they were together with that Kirill? I now remember clearly how my mother always dragged me to the theater for premieres and regular shows with his participation, but it never mattered. It turns out we went to be with my father, and the woman who loved him, judging by the diary, tried to look at the subject of her feelings, even though she gave up. To give Lizzie a clear description in the context of her strength, will, and character would not take a single psychologist. Sometimes she would pass before small difficulties, hide her head in the sand. Sometimes she could turn the whole world around to find a needle in the haystack. So now she has gathered a box of ballerinas in a bag, not forgetting to put back her mother's diary, went to look for contacts for a drama theater. Then she came back, took out the old notebook, and put it in her bag. She will put all the points above her in this old story. She will meet her father. Kirill Valentinovich was sitting in a dressing room, fighting with his face, or rather, with what was drawn and glued on him. To shoot from the facade, as he jokingly called his physiognomy, several layers of professional makeup, was still a task. But he did not like to attract his makeup artist. After the next performance, he felt like a lemon squeezed out to the last drop, no matter how pathetic it sounded near the theatrical bridge. He loved his profession. He put his heart and soul into it. He never stuttered on stage. He always tried to stay in shape. Morning runs in the park, swimming pool, and even gym, He did not abuse drinking and cigarettes. The only thing he did not know about measures was coffee and a couple of cakes. He calmed himself down by the fact that sweet eaters are definitely good people. Isn't that about him? Kirill was not a Seboraic in his daily life. He was born and raised in a family of two intelligent people with a brain and bones. His father is a professor in the field of biochemistry, his mother is a philologist, and he is an ardent fan of Eastern literature. Both of them knew several languages, traveled around the world, invested all their love and connections, giving their son the opportunity to finish a theater university in the specialty of acting. Priority to books and music, theater, and art exhibitions. There were plenty of paintings, statuettes, photos in the painted frames in the large apartment, and the furniture was old-fashioned, keeping the spirit and aristocratic style. Kirill was. The man had just finished filming the disgusting makeup when his faithful assistant knocked on the door of his personal office. Kirill Valentinovich, almost everyone in the theater has already left for home, and there is some girl asking about you at the security post. Ex-fans have been completely humiliated. This, for example, claims that she is your daughter. He was married twice, and both times his marriages ended in a fiasco in the matter of the birth of the heir, famous in the city of Fomilia. The electors sought to warm themselves in the rays of his glory, spend his fees for participation in theatrical productions, filming, films. Their plans did not include diapers. It was a prestige for all his fans, but it was a scandal-free experience. Where there is no love, there is no sadness. He visited the registry twice just because his mother wanted it very much. He was delighted to be free. After a few attempts to marry his beloved child, his mother left him alone. She made peace with his temporary friends. Those who had been with him for a long time even took them in their own home. She, like her husband, was not a connoisseur. She closed her eyes to her beloved sons. When you were as witty as wax, now you're a mother. And you're so spoiled by women that I can't even imagine how or who in their clan you could be caught. I have one regret. My father and I are no longer young, and we have never waited for our grandchildren. Would you like to become a father at the age of? Kirill went to the security post and remembered his last conversation with his mother. Kirill went to the security post. For some reason he thought, what would his wise mother do if he found an adult child right away? Most likely, she would have told him that he had missed the most important and interesting things in his life, and then she would have ruined all her unwavering love for her newborn grandson or granddaughter. At the entrance to the theater building, she was not a fan of a mature artist. Kirill Valentinovich looked at her questioningly. The girl was in shock. I found a diary of my mother, who is no longer alive. It is written in black and white that you are my father. I have only one request for you. Read the records of a woman who has already left for another world. I also agreed to conduct a DNA test, but my mother never lied. I believe her. Something in the nervous speech of the young man was particularly intriguing to the former Lavilas. He asked the guest just one question. Why did you decide to meet me so late in the afternoon? We could have solved all the questions about my supposed fatherhood tomorrow, with a fresh head. I am very tired after today's performance. I wouldn't have looked for you, Kirill Valentinovich, if I had been honest. But I'm all alone in this world. Now I have a terrible situation in my life. The day after tomorrow I was supposed to get married, but apparently I didn't come to my in-laws' yard. Not long ago, a few days ago, we bought me a wedding dress together with her. And today she brought me everything in holes, which, apparently, she did herself. Who is the evil witch? This is Chersina Inessa Vladimirovna, a famous businesswoman in our region. Menshikov whistled. He saw this lady from afar, an impregnable, like a stone citadel, and together with her, beautiful, proud, smart. He liked her very much then, and she aroused a burning male interest. He performed at the opening of one of her supermarkets, but refused to go to meet her. The host seemed too arrogant to him. He was glad to serve in the theater, but he was sick of serving someone. He then left the banquet in English, didn't start trading at parties with no face or name, hated the society for snobbish people, and they were the only ones left on the banquet to eat and drink. "Well, dear creature," smiled Kirill Valentinovich, "let's go to my dressing room to read your mother's diary." A famous actor, a licensed person, a person who can go on stage with an unpretentious look, even if he wants to cry or cry, having read the confession from the past, was all covered in goosebumps. He could not even imagine that somewhere near him, a woman who loved him so much was living, invisible. He remembered the funny young journalist perfectly. He dragged her after the premiere and the interview that she had taken from him literally on the go, on A. The article about his idol was very impressive. Everyone in the theater envied him for the fact that the material about him was so interesting, with such love for their profession. Kirill met a little more with the pinmaker, and then new fans began to offer themselves in his satellite again. And the parents returned from the sea. He now chose not to bring anyone to himself, but to whom to give a hand. Their paths with the journalist parted. She turned out to be pregnant, carried out, gave birth, raised his daughter. "How old were you when your mother died?" 10, said Liza. "So where did you live after her death?" "In the orphanage," his daughter simply answered. The honored artist was an old man of a drama theater, the legendary Don Juan of the local spree, the handsome, not stupid, rather kind-hearted. Although a little bit insolent, Kirill Valentinovich was covered in red spots. He himself did not expect such a reaction from himself, but he was so ashamed and so painful that he knew nothing about his ungrateful child, who remained an orphan with a living father, grandmother, and grandfather. Menshikov rushed to his cell phone and pressed the icon opposite his mother's room. "Mom, do you still have your cherry pie left there? I'm brewing tea. I'll be back soon. Not alone. My daughter and your granddaughter will come with me." All explanations later. On the day of the wedding of her son's wedding, Inessa was like a needle in the hay. After the visit to Liza, she was waiting for some kind of accident from the girl's side, but she kept her cough in silence. She went to the registry office, where her future in-laws were, but her heart told her that something was wrong. The bride was late for the ceremony, which was scheduled for p.m. Inessa was all ready. She felt sorry for only Roman at that moment, but she calmed herself down. She will find another passion for herself. But Elizabeth didn't give up on Svetlin. Guests, invited to the registration, already began to whisper. And suddenly a hulk ran through the crowd. "Look, there's the bride. She came in a white limousine. How nice. And what an exquisite dress. I think I saw this on some Hollywood stars. Or am I confusing something? And who is walking next to her? Is it really the Semenchikov, the star of our drama theater?" Inessa Vladimirovna and Roman froze at the other end of the carpet path. In their side, proudly raising her head, Elizabeth stepped in an amazing evening dress of gentle blue, so going to her shining eyes. A man with an imposing hand was leading the girl, in which it was impossible not to recognize the local celebrity, the actor Kirill Valentinovich Menshikov. In an improvised theater at such a moment, especially for the viewer in the face of the future sister-in-law and mother of the novel, some sketchbook author would definitely whisper, "It's a masterpiece." And now the curtain is raised. We will not cause an uproar to the situation. Later, in the restaurant, after the official part of the banquet, the public still could not calm down that I was waiting for the lonely evenings, the slowly growing old age, the distrust of the son, if the bride would share with him the story of her wedding dress. And suddenly someone hugged her shoulders. Inessa even shivered. A pretty old woman was standing next to her. "Inessa Vladimirovna, I finally found you. It's time for us to get to know you better. We are now one family. My granddaughter Liza told me so much about you. She was so upset that she ruined her wedding dress. She was so afraid to admit it. She was so upset that you bought her an amazing dress as a gift, but she couldn't keep it. I will introduce you to my husband and son more privately. My granddaughter's wedding is such an exciting event, and it hasn't happened in such a crowded gathering for a long time. Inessa Vladimirovna didn't believe her ears. Liza, a little girl, didn't even say a word to her family about who actually ruined her dress. It's unbelievable. The anniversary of the wedding of Roman and Liza, the whole family decided to celebrate in Inessa Vladimirovna's garden house. Liza was waiting for her child. She didn't want to go to a restaurant or a cafe. While the men were talking about kebabs, the women, who had already set their light snacks on the table, were talking carelessly. Kirill's mother again came to the housekeeper. When will you and Kirill stop hiding your relationship? You behave like children. Inessa, well, what kind of stupid pranks do you have to never get married? You've been living together for 6 months, and you won't break up with the conspiracy. I don't see how my son shines with happiness. And you are even more beautiful. We are going to have a golden wedding next year with my husband. Years together is not a joke. Marriage is not a punishment. This is a long way of compromises I will not hide. But together with the topic, a charming journey together. Mom joined Grandma Lisa. Why choose a dress? We will go together. My wedding dress changed my destiny. It gave me a big family where I was important, needed, loved. Now it's my turn to make you the same gift. I got a large fee for the article. It was even sent to the capital by journalists for the competition. Do I have the right to participate in your personal happiness if you have ever organized mine? She smiled wryly, hugged Inessa Vladimirovna by the shoulders. But why would anyone need to know how it really happened? Let it remain their little female secret.